Today, we had invited the state finance ministers with two things in our mind. As you know, the pre-budget consultations are going on, and it is a normal practice that we call the state finance ministers also to participate in the pre-budget consultation. So the first half of this day, in the morning session, pre-lunch, we had the pre-budget consultation with finance ministers. Post-lunch, we held the GST Council meeting. As you know, the last meeting was held sometime in October last year. And because of elections and states being busy with the campaign, just as we were busy as well, we thought it was better utilized if the time was used for both the budget consultation and also for the GST Council. And in this GST Council, therefore, I must upfront tell you that while there were a lot of issues on which the Fitment committee and the legal committee had worked and readied quite a few agenda, considering that we were meeting only for half a day, some agenda were taken up, considerable number for today. But even as we concluded today, we acknowledged the fact that we have ready agenda points which we could not take up today for want of time, which we'll take up in the next meeting. And therefore, it was also decided, keeping in mind one or two matters of urgency, which the states also had in their mind, to hold a GST meeting at the earliest after today, which will be sometime post the budget session, maybe sometime middle of August, before the end of August is when the next meeting will happen, where the agenda which we couldn't complete today it wasn't tabled also, but just to let you know that there was enough agenda. Some of them got to be discussed today, and the rest which could not be put on the agenda list itself will be carried on for the next meeting. But today, the 53rd GST Council meeting has actually taken a lot of decisions on trade facilitation, easing compliance burden, and giving relief to taxpayers in terms of compliance easing out. So this will benefit the traders, MSMEs, and taxpayers, is my strong view. I will just flag those issues and not get into the details. Later on, you can always ask us the question and we'll go about. First one is that there was a decision taken today and the GST Council recommended waiving interest and penalties for demand notices that have been issued under Section 73 of the GST Act. What are the items which are under Section 73? Cases not involving fraud, suppression, or misstatements. So, for all those notices which were issued under Section 73, for the fiscal years 2017-18, 18-19, and 19-20, the Council has recommended waiving interest and penalties on the demand notices which have been served. And this will be applicable in cases where the taxpayer pays the full amount of tax demanded in the notice by 31/3/2025. So notices were issued for those 3 financial years under Section 73 of the CGST Act. So if the taxpayer comes forward to pay the total amount before 31st March 2025, he shall not have to pay the interest or the penalties which have been normally put on them. So that relief has been given. Again, the Council has recommended, I'm going to the next item. Council has recommended that the time limit to avail input tax credit in respect of any invoice or debit note under Section 16(4) of the CGST Act through any GSTR 3B return filed up to 30/11/2021 for the financial years 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20 and 2021 may be deemed to be 30/11/2021. So for the same requisite amendment, retrospectively with effect from 1st July 2017, the Council has made a recommendation. Moving to the next item. In order to reduce government litigation, the Council has recommended a monetary limit of 20 lakh for GST Appellate Tribunal, 1 crore for High Court, and 2 crore for Supreme Court for filing of appeals. Filing of appeals by the department before these legal fora. Specific amounts, I repeat, the Council's recommended amounts, recommended monetary limits are 20 lakh for GST Appellate Tribunal, 1 crore for High Court, and 2 crore for Supreme Court for filing of appeals by the department. So I go to the next one. Council has also recommended that the maximum amount for pre-deposit, maximum amount of pre-deposit for filing appeal before the appellate authority shall be reduced from 25 crores CGST and 25 crores SGST to 20 crores CGST. CGST is 25 crore, comes to 20. SGST is 25 crore, comes to 20 crore. And that is the maximum amount of pre-deposit for filing appeals before the appellate authority. Also, the pre-deposit for filing of appeal before the appellate tribunal will be reduced from 20% with a maximum amount of 50 crore CGST and 50 crores SGST to 10% with a maximum amount of 20 crore CGST and rupees 20 crore SGST. So that is a recommendation. There are one or two which I'm not stating it here for want of time, but the complete decisions will be sent to you by mail. Council has also decided and recommended that amending the provisions of CGST Act to provide that the 3-month period for filing appeals in the GST Appellate Tribunal will start from a day which shall be notified by the government. So, the President of the Tribunal has assumed office, and the said period for filing filing appeal by the taxpayers will expire on 5th August 2024. But there is a need that we need to give an extension, so we've come up with this decision. The next one I'm moving over to is, in order to help small taxpayers, the Council recommended extending the time limit to furnish the detail and the returns in the form GSTR 4 from 30th April at present. At the moment it is 30th April. The Council has recommended that it be extended to 30th June. And this is for GSTR 4, those returns which have to be filed. This will apply for returns for the financial year 2024-25 onwards. The next one I'm moving on to, the Council has recommended requisite amendment in the CGST rules to provide that interest would not be charged on an amount which is available in the electronic cash ledger on the due date of filing the GSTR 3B return and is debited while filing the said return. This will ease interest burden on the taxpayer. I'm moving to the next decision, which is again taxpayer friendly. The Council has recommended again insertion of a functionality by way of Form GSTR 1A, which would allow a taxpayer to add any particulars of current tax period which he may have missed out on in reporting in the GSTR 1. So if he missed out on reporting in GSTR 1, there shall now be a form called GSTR 1A, in which he'll be able to do that for the current tax period or to amend any particulars which are already declared in GSTR 1 for the current tax period before filing GSTR 3B return for the current tax period. So one gets filed. If there's a missed out fact or you've done some error, you can correct it in the GSTR 1A. You can't, of course, go back for the current tax period is what is being said. Then there is going to be a rolling out of biometric based Aadhaar authentication in an all India basis. You know that we ran a pilot in Gujarat, also a pilot in Puducherry. There have been very good inputs coming out of it. So this will help us to combat fraudulent input tax credit claims made through fake invoices. In the cases where the applicant had opted for Aadhaar authentication and where the case has been identified on the basis of data analytics and risk parameters on the system, these have been tried in the GST Suvidha Kendras, and this will be taken up on an all India basis. So the GST Council has today recommended to roll out the biometric based Aadhaar authentication of registration of applicants on an all India basis in a phased manner. So if these are matters which came through the legal committee, there were a couple of clarifications issued by the Fitment committee. They've issued quite a few, but I'm highlighting one or two. Council recommended to prescribe a uniform rate of 12% on all milk cans, meaning steel, iron, aluminium, which are irrespective of the use. They are called milk cans, but wherever they are used, that will be the rate applicable so that no disputes arise out of it. They have a standard shape, so that will determine what is a milk can and what is not. Then Council also recommended to prescribe a uniform GST rate of 12% on all carton boxes and cases of both corrugated and non-corrugated paper or paper board. This will in particular help the apple growers of Himachal Pradesh, the apple growers of J&K, whose request it has been for quite some time. The Fitment committee has also recommended it now. There are details about HSN codes on this matter, but simple step is corrugated, non-corrugated, carton boxes made of paper or corrugated paper, non-corrugated paper or paper board will all benefit from this. Council also has clarified and recommended that the clarification be put out on that all types of sprinklers, including fire water sprinklers, will attract 12% GST, and to regularize the past practice on an as is whereas basis. Coming to the next point of solar cookers, Council recommended to prescribe 12% on all solar cookers, whether it has single or dual energy source. On services, there are just 2 points which I'll highlight to you. Services provided by Indian Railways to the common man, sale of platform tickets, facility of retiring rooms, waiting rooms, cloakroom services, battery operated car services are being exempted from GST. Further, intra-railway supplies are also being exempted. The other, which is very important, service by way of hostel accommodation is presently not exempt, which are being provided for students if they are outside of educational institutions. Am I right? If they are within an educational institution, they are already exempt. Please let there be clarity. Hostels which are for students which are within a resident, which are within an educational institutions are already exempt. Now, hostels which are for students but outside of an educational institutions are also getting exempt. But listen to this, please. The measure of relief for students and working professionals, Council has recommended to exempt accommodation services having a value of supply up to 20,000 per person per month. So it can be hostels run by Samaj, so that poor people belonging to their Samaj come there, stay there for 20,000 rupees per person per month. They will not be worried about GST at all. The condition, of course, is those provided these services are supplied for a minimum continuous period of 90 days. So it's not like, I don't want to take the name of branded names. It's not as if tourists who come and stay for 3-4 days and go away, no GST. No. It is meant for students, and therefore if they come and 90 continuous days if they stay, yes, they're exempt. Up to 20,000 rupees per person per month. So hostels run for people who come from rural areas and stay in some hostel which is run by either communities or social welfare organizations, not of the government, even private. They are not going to be touched by GST, provided it is 20,000 per person per month, and provided that is continuously occupied by that person for 90 days at least. I've just highlighted a few points, both from the legal and fitment committees. More can be answered even as you ask questions. There were quite a few new ministers. Was there a list of the committees? Some committees have had newer ministers taking charge in the place of ministers who were earlier there. As we go along, I'll mention it. Of immediate interest will be the Rate Rationalization Committee, for which the Deputy Chief Minister of Bihar, Samrat Chaudhary, has been given charge.
Ma'am,
That's fine.
should we open the floor for questions now? I'll request all of you to begin, and as and when you ask your question, please specify your name and organization. I begin in the center, 124. Ma'am, 124, the first question.
Ma'am, good evening. Shishir from Hindu Business Line. My question is about this online gaming, casinos and horse racing, because in the last meeting, there was a recommendation that it will be reviewed after 6 months, the progress. So has
And that's what we just heard. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman after the just concluded 53rd GST Council meet. Some interesting inputs coming from the Finance Minister, but nothing really on what was expected on the lines of the 28% GST on online gaming. There's been absolutely no mention of that by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Even the expectations of the aviation turbine fuel or ATF being under GST has not been mentioned by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Of course, we did hear certain sections of Section 73 of the GST Act, the demand notices which were issued by the GST authorities between the financial years 2017 and 2020. If the amount has been paid in full by the 31st of March 2024, for all the demand notices that were issued between 2017 and 2020, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said that these demands served under Section 73 will not be subjected to interest or penalties. So that is some good news coming from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Then, of course, hostel fees. Hostels which were already within educational campuses were exempt from GST. Finance Minister just mentioned that hostels which are now stationed even outside the premises of education institutes will not be subjected to GST of any kind. And in addition to that, she also mentioned that all services of hostels under all services provided by hostels, whether within or outside the premises of an education institute, will also be exempt from GST. So this is something as far as students are concerned, but just reiterating, expectations were high that online gaming could receive some sort of a relief from the 53rd GST Council meet. That hasn't happened. Expectations were also that there would be some discussion and some decision on aviation turbine fuel or ATF being under GST. There has been no mention of that as well. One interesting announcement coming from Finance Minister has been on milk cans. Milk cans made of steel or aluminium would be defined, and all milk cans, whether they are used for milk or any other purpose, would fall under the 12% GST. Even solar cookers, all solar cookers, whether they use one phase or two phases of electricity, are going to be under the 12% GST bracket. Remember, there were talks that there could be some rationalization of tax rates. Perhaps the existing broad level 4 GST slabs of 5%, 12%, 18% and 28% could be reduced to 3, where there could be a merger of the 12% and the 18% tax items under a single 15% tax bracket. There has been no mention of that either by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. What she did mention was that because of paucity of time, only a few items on the agenda could be taken up by the GST Council meet. However, one more GST Council meet, the 54th GST Council meet, has been slated for mid-August, soon after the union budget is presented by Finance Minister in the month of July. These are some of the highlights which have come in from that press conference. Let's cut back to the question and answer round at the press conference and see if there is something else that needs to be picked up and discussed right here on News 9 Live.
हमें ये जानकारी मिल रही है कि दिस विल बी फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन और फेकरी का हम कम कर सकते हैं।
नहीं, एक सवाल
272
जो
next.
कैंपस आउटसाइड कैंपस को जो एग्जाम्पशन मिलेगा जीएसटी से, उससे स्टूडेंट्स को क्या फायदा होगा? कुछ
बिल्कुल स्टूडेंट्स का फायदा होगा, क्योंकि कम्युनिटीज बहुत सारे स्टेट्स में उनके रूरल बच्चे के लिए सुविधाजनक सस्ते में हॉस्टल्स दे रहे हैं। हर एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशन में रेजिडेंशियल फैसिलिटी नहीं रहता, इसीलिए रूरल एरिया से जो बच्चे सिटीज में आकर पढ़ते हैं।
All right, that is the press conference still continuing. Shivam Mehta, Executive Partner, Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan continues to be with us. Shivam, absolute silence when it comes to inverted duty structure, when it comes to rationalization of GST slabs, when it comes to online gaming or even the aviation turbine fuel. Nothing really which industry or citizens were expecting got taken up. However, what did get taken up was the Section 73 GST notices which have been issued under Section 73 between financial year 2017 and financial year 2020, rather 2017, 18, 18, 19 and 19, 20. Interest and penalty would be waived on all those notices if the amount demanded has been paid in full by the 31st of March 2024. Good news for those who were reeling under the pressure of tax demand notices and slapped with interest and penalties?
Okay, one correction. I think what she said is, of course, for 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, these are the three periods. Notices issued under 73, tax has to be paid by 31st March 2025. So she has given you 6 months or 9 months time to pay these taxes and they will waive off interest and penalty. It's a big relief. Only problem is, most of the notices which industry gets are under Section 74. Because usually department allege that you have committed some fraud. So majority of notices are under 74, not under 73. She made it very clear that if there is a case of fraud, etc., there is no relief whatsoever. That's one point which I want to highlight. Second point, she's talking about notices. In many cases, I suo moto go and pay the taxes and I exercise my right under the very same section. So suppose you are running a business and you come to know that by some mistake you have paid lesser tax. You go ahead and pay the tax and you also along with that you have to pay the interest and the notices are there'll be no demand, no notice against you. There is no mention about that. What will happen in those cases? Because there could be 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20 periods wherein I do not have notices, but I know that maybe there is a mistake, etc. I have done. Whether I can use this new provision, these are the details I think which we can see in our fine prints. Definitely a big side of relief for those who already have these. But as I said, majority of chunk is outside 73, majority of them are under 74. So not a huge relief so far as industry is concerned, but those who have these, they should actually exercise it because interest in GST is 18% per annum.
All
So
right.
if these are 3 years demand, so the interest might be even more than the tax demand as on date.
Okay. Something very interesting with the finance minister mentioned, Shivam, if you heard it, was about the incentives to apple growers and boxes of all kinds, cardboard boxes, some wooden boxes. All of these are likely to get exemption from GST. What do you make of that? And the timing of specifically going with the apple growers at a time, when J&K is important for the government.
Okay, I think corrugated boxes, there was always a confusion about these boxes, what will be the rate of tax. In 21, I remember they increased the rate of tax to 18. Now, most of these boxes act as a packing material. Ideally, they should be under 12% category, especially when they are used for the packing of the goods. Let's say I'm using a packing material for packing of products like fertilizers or other products. This packing cost higher rate of this contributes towards inverted tax structure also. So therefore it's a big sign of relief because what I see, I don't know, milk can also, my sense is milk can is also a move towards rationalizing the rates. Because if you look at milk products, most of the milk products are under 12% category. So milk cans under 18 would mean inverted structure in their entire supply chain. That's what they have probably have done it. Definitely a positive move because corrugated box industry, I know as I personally dealt with them, and they have been struggling with the rate structure for quite some time. And this was a demand which was pending for last many years. I think it's a big side of relief for them, particularly this industry of corrugated box.
Okay, I want to come back to and spend some time on specifically what the citizens will benefit, not exactly the business community, but talking about citizens. I think two specific instances mentioned by Finance Minister. Number one being hostels, all hostel fees which pertains to hostels within educational campuses were already exempt, FM says. But in addition to that, now hostels which are not within the education premises, but also the service that go into hostels are now going to be exempt from GST. This was number one, Shivam, and the other one pertains, let's talk about hostels first and then we'll come to the other one on solar cookers.
See, the hostel, she's right. When Finance Minister said hostel fees is exempt when it is charged from the student, there was only one catch to it. The provisions was in such a manner written, at least written in such a manner. The authorities were interpreting that if the hostel fees is collected by the educational institution, then only it is exempt. But most of the educational institutions outsource the business of hostel to some other legal entity. Therefore, the fees is charged by some other legal entity, but from the students. So there was always a dichotomy whether the GST will be payable or not. This is a big side of relief for all the education institutions for sure. There were, I know, personally I have dealt these matters. There were some disputes with the tax authorities they were facing. This amendment will at least keep that in peace. And for future also, students will be benefited. There'll be no question of taxes. And ideally, there should not be any taxes on education. A country like India, wherein half of the population is, I'll say, need this. You are talking about unemployment. There should not be any taxes on education institution. And it's a big move. I really appreciate. It was due. It should have been done, and it is done today. It's like she said, there was very less time, and still they took up this hostel. I'm very happy for the students and the country for.
Okay, and what about solar cookers? Because I think solar cookers, again, a pure play household item, something which is completely aligned with the government's vision of being net carbon neutral, overall the entire push on renewable energy. Solar cookers, both using one phase, two phase, now under 12% GST. What has really changed for those who are intending to buy a solar cooker now?
Oh, I think, again, solar cooker could be, let's wait for the details, could be these solar cookers are probably used in a supply chain wherein it's not about I don't know whether she's talking about end use solar cookers. Again, this could be a move towards rate rationalization. We have to wait for the details for what kind of solar cooker or what exactly she's referring to. Again, my sense is all these rate structure changes which she mentioned was for inverted rate rationalization. That's my sense. We have to wait for the details to answer that.
Right. Well, I also want to touch upon the unfinished agenda, Shivam, because Finance Minister said that there was a paucity of time because the first half of the meeting was dedicated to Finance Ministers laying out their expectations from the budget, and only the second half of the GST Council meet was actually dedicated to the GST Council meet itself. And now the unfinished agenda is likely to be taken up in the month of August. Mid-August is what FM said, definitely before end August, a few weeks maybe after the union budget is presented. What is the unfinished agenda as per you, Shivam? What is there yet to be taken up which we have seen complete silence on this time?
See, one, we discussed about it. I think if there is no change so far as natural gas and ATF, I'm surprised. It was definitely, my sense is it should have been in the agenda list. And at least these two products would have definitely helped the industries those who are in gas manufacturer, gas producers, or in the supply chain in the petrochemical industries from polymer to plastic, which could have actually reduced the cost in the supply chain to a large extent. I'm surprised why that was not taken. That could have been, these two industries could have been brought in the tax net. ATF certainly would have helped airline industry, especially when they are in the most of them are in a very tough time. They were looking for some support from the government in terms of if ATF can be brought in the GST net, at least the overall cost of running the aircraft would have gone down substantially. These are the two things. I don't know whether they were taken today or not, but I was really hoping if they can, that should have been mentioned. Another is I should also mention about there were certain agendas like gaming was something which in October they said we will review for 6 months. Today there is absolute silence on it. I'm surprised why there is no mention about it. Another is I should also talk about some changes which was due from the government, which was announced in last agenda meeting. This agenda meeting industry was looking forward to is one is on the liquor industry was looking at no GST on ENA. Now since October 23, it was announced in the press release that we are giving up our rights to tax ENA so far as GST is concerned, and the industry has stopped paying GST from October. Now, with absolute mum on what has happened thereafter, and we are talking about a good gap of 8 months, whether they have actually considered they will be coming out with the amended provisions, etc. If not, then it's a serious thing for liquor industry as well. So
Right.
these are the two things I was expecting, at least 3 points which I mentioned I was expecting. but I don't know. Maybe they are there in the fine papers. Like she said, we'll email the details to you. Maybe those things are there, but definitely I don't think so. Natural gas and ATF has been cancelled.
Right. Let's cut back to the presser, which is still on, and see some of the questions that Finance Minister is addressing. And then I want to come back to you, Shivam, and discuss this Aadhaar-based, biometric-based GST registration. But first, let's listen into what Finance Minister is speaking at the presser.
So the revenue foregone will not be much.
264 at the back left.
To the GST rationalization only. So this the discussion on the rate rationalization has been going on since 2021. So could you please share what specific items are being discussed for this? This
What
is Haris from News
specific?
18. So
What specific?
items are being discussed for rate
See,
rationalization
as
as of
I
now?
said, the committee, which is a group of ministers, will do a presentation to the council in the next meeting. Then we'll know what issues are being taken up by them, how far they've progressed, and what will be left for them to do.
We'll take the last question here, number 10.
Ma'am, I am Monica from the New Indian Express. Ma'am, a lot of companies, they have filed writ petition against the council's decision related to GST on corporate guarantee. Was that taken up in today's meeting?
So corporate guarantee here, it is being clarified that in case it is for services where or goods where whole ITC is available, the corporate guarantee will not attract a GST. So that is a major relief because most of the goods, services are taxable and they are not exempt. So all of them will get this relief.
Okay. And
Thank-
also regarding this anti-profiteering, so introduction of sunset was expected in today's meeting in the anti-profiteering provisions. Was that also discussed?
Yes, that was taken up today.
Yes, and it was decided that this will be sunset. So the last date that has been fixed for this is 1st April 25. However, the cases which have already been registered, they will continue to be heard and they will be decided. The other decision taken in this regard is to shift from CCI, the Competition Commission of India, the hearing of these cases, to the principal, to the GST AT as and when it becomes functional.
Also, sir, ma'am, I would like to know about this pre-deposit new limits. So now, if someone has already paid the extra, if someone has already paid this pre-deposit according to the previous law, now will they be eligible for the extra amount they have paid for the refund?
This is prospective.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Just one information which I want to use this opportunity because I'm before the media, and through the media I want to reassure the assessees that our intent is to make the GST assessees' life easier. We are working towards less and less compliance. I want to underline the fact on behalf of the CGST that notices are not being sent here, left, right, and center, because most often we are asked, why so many notices? Don't you know what's happening, and so on. I want to use this occasion to let you know that only 1.96% of all active tax assessees have been sent any notice from the central GST. So if there are 1,14,939 active assessees, it is only to less than 2%, 1.96% assessees, 1,14,939 assessees. Less than 2% of them have been sent notices from the central GST. I want to be clear on this. Our intention is to make it easier, simpler, less cumbersome. And sooner that we talk of more and more ease of doing business, we'll follow that. And that is proven by this data that as of 31st December 23, only 1.96% of these assessees have been sent a notice or a notice. So not beyond that. So 1.96% of the 1,14,900 and
All right, so Finance Minister, they're saying that the number of tax notices being sent by the centre are very small and just 1.96%. But Shivam, if I can bring you back in, Shivam Mehta, Executive Partner, Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan, who's been with us right from the start of this show. Shivam, 1.96% doesn't seem like a very small number. You're pretty much sending a demand notice to 1 in every 50 companies which are filing GST, and Finance Minister really insisting that that it is a taxpayer-friendly sort of a regime and a compliance ease which the GST Council wants to introduce. But 1 in every 50 tax filers getting a notice doesn't seem like a small number to me.
That's a very, very huge number. If you look at, in fact, as you know, there is no tribunal as of now. The disputes are pending. In the absence of tribunal, people have approached high courts. High courts have refused to interfere. They are saying once the tribunal will be formed, we'll take care of that. I'll be surprised if these disputes get any timely redressal, even when the tribunals are formed.
And more than that, now there has been a limit also set on the appeal. So 20 lakh if you want to appeal in the Appellate Tribunal, 1 crore if you want to take it to the High Court, and 2 crore rupees if it is the Supreme Court. So what do these limits really mean? Is it business friendly, or is it not as business friendly as it should be?
No, I think it's one, these monetary limits were always there. In the previous regime also they were there. Almost similar what they have mentioned, she has mentioned in this speech. It's definitely to reduce the burden on the courts. Also, it is a way lot I have seen in the past based on my experience. These are always considered as tax friendly, so that if your tax demand is up to 20 lakhs, you got a relief at a lower level. Tribunal, there might not be any appeal from the government to the tribunal, even if that orders is incorrect. So in the case of High Court, it will be 1 crore. So in the case of Supreme Court, it will be 2 crore. So small taxpayers may not have, really do not want these disputes to go to High Court and then to Supreme Court. They really do not have enough financial strength also. So if you look at the limits, they are fine. They should be there, both friendly for the courts as well as for the taxpayer. It's a positive move. It should have been there. It's a very, very positive move.
Right, positive mood is the word coming in from Shivam Mehta. Shivam, thank you so much for being here with us for the last 1.5 hours, really helping us decode what should have been in that GST Council and eventually what came out of it. But before we end the show, I also have Anita Rastogi, Principal, Price Waterhouse and Company LLP, joining us. Anita, we've got just about 2 minutes or so. I want to get a sense from you. What was the highlight from what you heard from the Finance Minister and the Q&A session after that? And what are the very, very specific miss areas that must be taken up in the 54th GST Council meet in the month of August?
I think the highlights were that, yes, clearly the focus was on ease of doing business, but I think what she answered in the question was regarding anti-profiteering. So very clearly they have said that 21st of April 2025 is going to be the sunset clause, which means after that there will be no more cases which will be registered for anti-profiteering, which means whenever there's a rate arbitrage, rate changes, or there's a more excess credit which is being taken, so on and so forth, there will be no anti-profiteering case which will be filed against the assessee. So that's a very, very good news, because there had to be a sunset clause. One. Second point is there's also a very slightly, they just shared something in the question answer, was regarding a clarification of corporate guarantee, where they have said that they would be giving a relief on corporate guarantee. They will be kind of giving some sort of an exemption if the corporate guarantee is pertaining to goods or services which are largely taxable. So we believe where largely the ITC is available. I think that's what he was saying, because he said it in the last moment. These two are the good news in the question answer session. Overall, I would say that there was a huge amount of expectation, because the number of agenda points were very, very many. this GST Council meeting happened after 8 months, which itself is a very long term.
Right.
Another good news I would say is at least the intent of the government at the last, they did say that they don't want to do too much of litigation. The show cause notices, because there were umpteen amount of demands being raised in the last 1.5 years against the taxpayers across India.
Right.
FM actually said that, states are doing, yes, we know, but from a center perspective, they believe that they have not really done too much of demand notices to the taxpayer, which is only 2% of the total central taxpayers as far as her calculation goes. But their intent is that they will not be issuing show cause notices left, right, center, which is a good news.
Right.
The
On the
but the
unfinished
SAM
agenda, I want to come to the unfinished agenda in the interest of time, Anita. The next GST
lots
Council
of them.
meet in August. Online
Yeah.
gaming, there was complete silence. Fuel, whether ATF or petrol diesel, there was complete silence. Inverted duty structure, especially for automobiles, there was complete silence. And rationalization of tax slabs. Are these really the priority areas of the government, or do you think we are jumping the gun and the government has a different priority and we are unable to sort of grapple with that reality?
No, I think the reality is that they have just too much thing on the plate, and they really did not do enough and more in the last 8 months. If we would have had those regular GST Council meetings, other than the fact during elections where we can't have, I don't think that so many line items would have been pending for them. But at least she did mention that the next GST Council meeting is going to be quick and soon. It will not be delayed. So they really have to quickly take measures on that as well. Specifically, there are multiple litigations on many matters which are now going to High Court and Supreme Court. I think all of them should be put at rest, like majority of them, wherever it's a matter of interpretation and you just have to give a clarification. I
Right.
think that is very critical for them. So government has a lot to do. We just want them to actually take up all of these matters, and in the next soon GST Council meeting, they should close up all those matters as well.
And one final word, Anita, before I let you go. This just concluded 53rd GST Council meet. Was there anything in it for the common man apart from perhaps hostel services and solar cookers? There's been absolutely nothing for the common man who continues to reel under inflation, urban unemployment, and of course, very high direct tax rates. So has the GST Council once again not lived up to the expectations of the common man?
Yeah, just one more, I think, on the Indian Railway side, on the platform tickets, etc., they have kind of exempted the GST on that, which was always exempt. They had just brought in a couple of years back for a year or so. But you're right, they have not really done anything for the common man at all on this, because that is primarily to be driven by the Fitment committee on the rate change. And there's hardly any rate change they have actually done. So yes, a lot of want as to what they need to do next steps from a common man perspective.